I have with me now Colonel John Haumersen, who's also president of the Racine Taxpayers Association. We're going to talk a little bit about climate change or global warming, whatever you want to call it. You know, there's been a lot of talk about human activity and its effect on global warming. I personally don't feel it has much to do with it. I think the sun and the cosmos have a lot to do more with our climate than us running around in RVs. But it turns out that this blaming human activity on climate change goes back a long ways, right, John? And in fact, you've come up with an interesting concept with regards to yo-yos and climate change. And what is this? What is this about yo-yos?
Well, about 80 years ago, 1933, there was they had a problem in Syria with a cooling and a lack of rain. And it was just about the time that they introduced yo-yos into Syria. And he said, you know, when the yo-yo goes down and then it comes up, it is turning the rain off. The rain used to come down, and now it doesn't do it anymore because we have yo-yos that doing it. So we're going to
So
ban...
it's the yo-yos that are causing the drought.
We're going to ban yo-yos, and they did.
And not that...
Now that has about as much to do with climate change as what we're doing right now.
With a little bit of the toxins we throw into the environment, it's really, really minor compared to what the planet itself throws in there with these volcanoes.
That's
and stuff
correct.
Like that.
We have, the climate has been changing for about 4 billion years. That's somewhat over 3.5 billion years before we got here. And we know this climate has been changing, so we didn't have too much to do with that. It's still changing. It's not really happening because of us. It's happening because of changes in the sun and our orbit, the Earth's orbit, and so on. It keeps on going along. Once upon a time, Canada was semi-tropical. And we know that because we find dinosaur bones in Canada. And they're subtropical animals.
Right.
So we know it was warm up there then. And then about 20,000 years ago, we had a cold front come in. And if you don't know it, where we are living right now was 1 mile under the ice.
Right.
That's how cold it was, right here in Racine. Now, if you want to know how far down that front was,
ice, yeah.
I suggest that you go down and drive up and down Interstate 88 in Illinois and look north. 1.5 miles to 2 miles north of there, there's this great ridge line all the way across. You know, when the glacier moves, it moves Earth. And that ridge line is the pile of earth that was in front of the ice cap that covered all of Canada, northern states in the United States, dug the Great Lakes and so on. That's 20,000 years ago. Another factor, if it hadn't been for that, we wouldn't have had any Indians in the Western Hemisphere. These are interesting things that just come along. The Mongols came across the ice that covered all of Canada and Alaska and the gap between China. And the Mongols became the American Indians. They became the Mayan Indians. They became the Aztec Indians. They became the Incas. If it hadn't been for the ice cap, we wouldn't have any of that. Anyway, this has been going on for a long time, and all of a sudden it's our fault that we've got global warming. Well,
I have a question with you about how wrong this can be. Now we have come along technologically enough to understand that yo-yos don't cause climate change.
Right.
We're still stuck in this idea that a little bit of CO the carbon dioxide, CO2 that's in the atmosphere causes it. I would like to point out that when you look at the content of our atmosphere, you'll find out that it's a certain percentage of nitrogen, a certain percentage of oxygen, and the rest is argon, and that's 100%. And you say, well, where's CO2 in that? And it's not in the formula, except as a trace gas. It's less than, it's an extremely small percentage. And this little teeny tiny bit of percentage that's in there is causing massive amounts of global change. Well, that just in itself is ridiculous. But then you get down to these predictions, and I believe it was about 10 years ago, wasn't it predicted that the ice cap was going to be gone by 2013?
Yes.
And now they're coming up and saying that there's 1 million more square miles of ice?
No, there's almost 1 million more square miles of ice on the ice caps.
Yeah, from last year.
And the northern Arctic ice cap has grown 60%. 60%.
Yeah.
You know, the polar bears were dying because there wasn't enough ice. Now there's 60% more ice, and as a matter of fact, the polar bear population is growing. There's some other things about this.
Well, we only got about 30 seconds left here.
Well,
but I think the main point that we want to cover is that you can get some ridiculous ideas about global warming. Down to the point where we're blaming yo-yos, and that's with climate change. That wasn't global warming. That was actually with drought. But now we're into this CO2 thing, and their predictions aren't coming out right. We're driving more RVs, and yet the ice cap is growing. It's actually cooling.
That's right.
The average temperature has been dropping recently.
The average temperature has been going down for 15 years, very slowly. But they keep saying that the average right now is higher than it was the 15 years prior. And that's because the rise in temperature was faster than the drop in temperature. So the average now is still higher than the average the previous 15 years. That doesn't mean it's not going down, it's just not going down as fast as it went up at that particular time.
All right, well, thank you much, John. We're out of time here. We're going to take a break here. You know, if you follow the council meetings at all, you would know that when we get a lot of these contracts through that the city makes with contractors, that doesn't the ultimate amount that the taxpayers end up paying. And I have Alderman Eddie Deal of the 15th District coming up next. He's going to talk more about these change orders. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.